Okay, so anybody, one last chance, does anybody want me to look at your outline? You just, it was pretty straightforward. There's no tricks here, but I do this because if you never, ever, ever did Institute for Excellence in Writing, you've never done this before, it might feel funny. So this week, all you're gonna do is rewrite that. But that's too easy because we've done this before. So I would like to add something. Oh, before I move on, I noticed a couple of things in papers that I want to address. Did I mention verb tenses last week to you guys? Okay, it was my Tuesday people. Oh, some people say I did and some people say I did. It was 2 weeks ago. Okay, so we've talked about keeping it in the same verb tense. We've talked about that, okay. So did we talk about its and its? No, okay. So we have this word and we have this word, and this marker is not mine, it belongs to the church, and I don't like it. Hang on. You can't see it. I don't know what somebody wrote on this board. It's very, that's much better. Okay. And to make you feel better, I know there's several papers in here that I corrected this on your paper. If this is you, do not feel bad. Adults do this all the time. Drives me nuts, but that's my psychological problem, not yours. Okay, so, but the thing is, it's an easy mistake because in English, we use apostrophes for two things, don't we? We use it for possession. This is Mrs. Ferguson's cupcake. It is. You notice something about me? And so when somebody possesses something, we use an apostrophe S. We also use it when we make a contraction, right? When we turn cannot, which by the way is one word, not two. If we take away two of the letters, we turn it into can't. So your problem when you're faced with this is people say, oh, is it possessive or is it a contraction? And we have to choose, it's a contraction. When you use an apostrophe, it means it is. If you can't use the words it is, it's not the right place. So the dog has its, I'm going to do it its bone. If I can't write it is, the dog has it is bone. That is not what I mean. That's not what I mean. So that means I can't use the apostrophe. This is possessive. And I don't think my one pep talk here is going to cure you. So it helps me to think of, you know, get some funny thing that sticks in your mind. Do you know what I mean? Some funny way to remember it. Can we think of a funny way to remember this means this is possessive and apostrophe?
Okay, so the apostrophe could be like the dot of the I, not a stretch. Yes.
Okay, so this is the imaginary dot of the I that goes in it is. I like that. I like that. Sometimes I do like apostrophe. See, apostrophes are awful. But then you have to remember apostrophes are awful for possessives. I do this. My husband likes Twizzlers, but I can't remember if it's strawberry or cherry. So strawberry is swell. See, that's what that's what I remember. Strawberry is swell. He likes strawberry. He doesn't like cherry. Anyway, if you can invent your own little method of remembering things, I live on my little funny methods of remembering things. But I like that. The apostrophe is the dot of the I. The apostrophe is the dot of the I that goes in it is. I like it. So you guys have done parallelism. If you see a P in the margin of your paper, it's because I think I spotted your parallelism, but you didn't tell me about it. Oh, I didn't give you your papers back. Okay, I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to get everybody. Jesse. And Adeline. And the one with, oh, Brett. I was going to say it's at the bottom. Dalton. You're a tough one, Dalton, for some reason. Maya. It's like my morning workout, too. Simeon. Lauren, you have 2 pages, I remember. With no pretty stars and colors. Amorous. Ella. Isabella. Alice. And Bailey. Okay. So if I wrote something on your paper and you don't know why, please ask. Also, sometimes I write on your paper, please ask about this in class because I think everyone should know about it. Does anybody have something they want to ask about? Yes. Ah, awesome. Okay. I have no idea what it is. It'll be a surprise for me. Okay. Oh, yes. So, but we talked about this already, didn't we, a couple weeks ago? So I'm not sure why I said that. It was another one of those everyone. Hey guys, are you with me? It was another one of those, everyone, no one. Oh, maybe it's because we did it with verbs and you did it with a pronoun. This is why I had you mention it. So do you mind if I read it? Okay. She wrote, everyone on board was praying for their lives, which is something we would say in normal conversation. We say things like this all the time. But do you remember how we said that everyone, we don't say everyone are coming, all right, to the party. Because everyone means this one and this one and this one, and it's singular. So we say everyone is coming. Likewise, when we use a pronoun, everyone was praying for. We can't say their lives. Each person is praying for his own life, right? And I know why I asked about this. Everyone was praying for, you put their lives. But if each one is praying for their own, I use there again, individual life, we need to make this singular, but we have a problem now. Can anybody see the problem? If there is the plural pronoun, what is the singular pronoun for third person? Third person. I, you, he, she, or it. He, she, or it. The problem is we don't have one. We have a choice. And so do I say everyone was praying for his life, everyone was praying for her life, or everyone was praying for its life, and it would be, haha, it's with no apostrophe. Here's the deal. A lot of times you read people use their the way Adeline did because our society has become very touchy about gender words. And it makes me angry grammatically. It doesn't make me angry genderly, or it does that too. But it mostly makes me angry grammatically because we can't say everyone is praying for their life because there's plural. But people do it because they go, oh, if I say his life, the women will feel excluded. Hello, for centuries we've used his because we got to pick something and it means all people. Just like man, it means mankind, okay? It doesn't mean only men and not women. So technically, we're assuming they're not objects, and we don't say everyone was praying for its life, because that would be odd. So everyone was praying for his life or her life. Sometimes people avoid this by saying everyone was praying for his or her life, which is just awkward. Now, in your story, I'm assuming there are no ladies on board St. Brendan's voyage. So we're probably safe to say his. Does everything I'm saying make sense? You know, so just to cover, everyone is singular. So we can't say their, because they is plural. So now we have to pick a singular one. But we're stuck with the problem, which gender to choose. If it is unknown, we stick with the man, we say his. Does that make sense? I see nods that are sort of like, I'm just going to humor her. Are you humoring me? Are those nods that mean you really understand, or are those humoring me nods? No answer. Oh, yes, Ella.
So
Thank you.
If you had everyone was praying for their life, would it be like everyone?
Yes.
Praying for another group?
Yes. Everyone was praying for, except their lives. We'd have to say their lives. But yes, so everyone at this table was praying for their lives.
Yeah.
That would be what you're saying when you do that. I know. Yeah, then you'd be the dog's life. Yes, with no apostrophe. I know that's a lot of information, but you know, if we repeat it, and I may repeat it, by the end of the year, it might sort of register with us. Yes, Bailey. It's never right to put there if the subject is everyone, because everyone is singular. Unless you're praying for another group of people. You know, our pronoun has to agree with the subject. And so, because his is singular and there is plural. Okay, so I understand what Bailey's asking. I think what you're saying is his is now ambiguous because we could say everyone was praying for his life. Okay, so in that I agree with you. So it would be clearer if we said everyone was praying for his own life. That I agree with. Yeah, except it's just not right. I mean, there is plural and Well, that's the same thing with there. But you're right. If we wanted to be very specific, we could say everyone was praying for his own life. I agree with that. I agree with that. Because the way we did it both ways, it's ambiguous. All right. Go ahead.
His own life, like is that necessary to say his own?
Well, because Bailey is pointing out it's ambiguous, which means we're not totally sure what the meaning, because that could mean everyone was praying for his life. Do you see? Mm-hmm. Now, those of you, well, you're all doing Latin, right? If you're here all day, you're doing Latin. You know, Latin is lovely because it has two hises. There is a word that means your own, and there's a word that means someone else's. So if you've learned suis, it's an us adjective, it means your own, or his own, or their own. And then there's eius, which means his, someone else's. So in Latin, everyone was praying for his life, his own life. Everyone was praying for his life there. And in Latin, you know. In English, we don't know. Just like in English, we don't know if I say, hey, you, if I mean one you or all of you. And in Latin, we do, don't we? We have a singular you and a plural you. Sorry, this is not a Latin class. You have Latin later. We do double Latin today. Okay, on to parallelism. I have asked you to do parallelism with words. Okay, 3 adjectives, 3 nouns, 3 verbs, 3 adverbs. I would like you to keep doing that. One place in your paper. If you do more than one, it's fine, but at least one. But we're going to add to it. I would like you to do a second kind of parallelism. All right, and I'm going to give you some examples. I actually already sent the email to your parents, and I put examples in the email too, so they can help you. We can use parallelism with phrases or clauses. I'm not going to take the time to write all these. If you want to write these down, it's fine. Mrs. Ferguson walked across the floor, past the camera, and to Ella's chair. 3 prepositional phrase. Across the floor, past the camera, to the chair. 3 prepositional phrases. I could use 3 clauses. I like to eat sweet treats when I am hungry, when I am lonely, and when I am sad. And that tells you a lot about my relationship with food, which is really unhealthy. But, and I'm working on that. But do you hear the 3 wins? When I am hungry, when I am lonely, when I am sad.
Oh, so can we do
It could be 3 who, which clauses. Mrs. Ferguson is my teacher who gives me assignments, who encourages my work, and who loves to eat sweets. All right, and then we have 3 who's. Does that make sense? Does everybody hear that and see that? It's better when you keep them the same. Like who does, and you see, but we couldn't, Mrs. Ferguson is my teacher who, and then we're telling 3 things to describe her. Do you see what I mean? And so you couldn't put a where. Yeah, Mrs. Ferguson is my teacher who teaches us writing where I go on Wednesdays. No, see, that's not it anymore.
another?
Give me the example.
I don't know, like, Italy, where,
Oh yeah, Italy, where people eat spaghetti, where, yes, oh, I see what you're saying. Italy, where people eat spaghetti, where there are mountains and rivers, and where there are wonderful ancient Roman ruins, is a place I would like to visit. Notice I have to finish the sentence, because if I just say Italy, where people eat spaghetti, where, that would be a fragment when I got to the end of all those wheres, so I have to say something about Italy. I could say this: Italy is a place where people eat spaghetti, where there are mountains and rivers, and where there are many awesome Roman artifacts.
so you can do that. You can use parallelism.
Yes. When, while, where, as, since, if, although, because, any of those clauses, and prepositional phrases. Yes, Bailey, you had a question? Except that would be 3 sentences. Each of those would be its own sentence, because those are, when we ask a question with who, it stands by itself. But when we use a who clause, Bailey is a student who is wearing a blue hoodie. You see, then who is wearing a blue hoodie, and who has red hair, and who has an inquiring mind, all right? Then that would be okay. But if I ask 3 questions, those would be 3 sentences. No, no, because those are each. Who is Mrs. Ferguson? That's a sentence. Who likes Mrs. Ferguson? That's a sentence. Don't answer those questions. Yes, Maya. That's okay.
You've been talking about
Yes, yeah, no, go for it. Yes.
who likes teaching, you say,
Yes, but then you have to say something else about her, because if you ended it there, that would be a fragment. This is worth talking about. So Mrs. Ferguson, M. Ferg, okay. who, oh, we'll make them short, who likes sweets, who who teaches history, and who, oh, I like that, thank you, makes me laugh. All right, I'm gonna say it on something. Okay, so let's look at this. Mrs. Ferguson, who likes sweets, who teaches history, and who makes me laugh. That's not a sentence, is it? Can you see that it's not a sentence? Yes, Roy. Well, that still would not be a sentence. Here's why. Oh, go ahead, Maya. Yes, is the best. I like this sentence. I like this sentence. Okay, so here's why. Because a who, which clause is removable. That's why usually there's cases where we don't, but we usually put commas around it. So this is all expendable information. I'm going to take each one of them. Each who, which clause. We can just take them out. And we have a sentence. Mrs. Ferguson is the best. It's a sentence. So you have to be able to take your who, which is out. And you know what? It gets complicated when we use three, but listen to it when I use one. My dog who chases cars. Is that a sentence? You can hear right away that I need to say something else about my dog, don't I? My dog who chases cars. And it makes you say, okay, what about your dog who chases cars? Is he sick? Is he dead? Is he, kidnapped? Did he get hit by a car? I want to know more. And so piling words onto our sentence doesn't automatically make it a complete sentence. Does that make sense? And maybe if you're not totally sure you understand how to do this, maybe you should avoid this, right? And just do the wins. When I come to class on Wednesday, and no, I don't like it. I am always excited when I come to class on Wednesday, when I walk into Mrs. Ferguson's class, and when she hands me back my paper with red writing all over it. That would be a sentence. Okay. Or you can stick with prepositional phrases. They're easy. Tell me some prepositions. This might be easy for you. Just start giving me some prepositions. About, above, across. Okay, you're going to obviously give them to me in alphabetical order because you memorized them. So years ago when my kids were we did Shirley grammar at my kids. And they had a little device to remember it if you're kind of weak on prepositions. Picture a mouse and a block of cheese. And then what can the mouse do in relation to the cheese? He can be on the cheese, in the cheese, under the cheese, through the cheese, over the cheese, around the cheese, through the cheese, over the cheese. No, eating, see, and that's the dangerous thing about the mouse and the cheese, because now eating is a verb. But the mouse is here and the cheese is here, where can I put the mouse? On it, through it, under it, over it, beside it, across it. Do you see what I mean? Or for those of you who have memorized prepositions, you can use that. Do we feel good about prepositions? Thumbs up in the air if we feel pretty good about prepositions. Okay. So, in the paper you write about Charlemagne and the robbers, you're going to put one kind of parallelism, which is words. You've been doing this for me for several weeks. That's fine. And you're going to put a second one with phrases or clauses. And when you write, so this is my paper, I'm writing, and then I have my 3 words, all right? And I'm going to put parallelism 1, because that's the first kind of parallelism that we learn. And then I'm writing, and then I get to this sentence, and it's got my 3 phrases, and I'm going to put parallelism 2, right? Because we have 2 kinds now. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes, Rhett. Oh, no, just wherever it is on your paper. That was all I meant. No, you don't have to do them in order like this. You can put them in any, what have I done? Oh, you can put them in any order you want. Now, I want to make sure, does everyone feel you completely understand the instructions? Okay, please, there is no silly question in here, okay? There's just never a silly question. If you're not sure you know something, then speak up. And if something occurs to you as we move on, you can always speak up. You can always come to me after class if you want clarification, but you don't want to do it in front of everyone. That's okay too. Please get out your reading questions. And also, would you get out your timelines? Because it occurred to me there was something I wished we had done last week. I would like you to get out the timeline that has 700 on one end and 1,000 at the other end. Yes. And last week we talked about Charlemagne, and you're continuing to write about Charlemagne. That's a notable event that I really feel like we should record. So when you find your timeline, I would like you to go to this page and write about here, 800. Well, it would be 850 would be the middle, so slightly to the left of middle, although I'm not going to come and check your timeline scale and make sure your lines are in the right place. It's between 700 and 1,000, so we're good. I would like you to label this Charlemagne crowned emperor. All right, and we talked about how that was quite important for history. This Holy Roman Empire that was created is going to pretty much set the tone for Europe for centuries. And when the Pope did this, it created sort of like a new Western Roman Empire that had been gone for 300 years. There hadn't been a Western Roman emperor. Remember, over in Constantinople, there are still emperors, but not in the West. While you write that down, I'm going to bring you you can get out your questions after you write that down. I'm also going to bring you a map. There are all sorts of arrows all over the map. Please do not be alarmed, because there's only one group that we're concerned about on this map. 2, 3, 4, 5. See if I can count right today. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, awesome. Good remembering. Okay, so there's your new maps. This week we read about the Vikings, who are just fun. Everybody's going to get a Viking game at the end of class. So I want to say they've discovered a game that the Vikings played, and my kids, we used to play it, and I made materials for everybody to take it home and make your own game, and I'm going to teach you how to play it so you can go home and either amuse or annoy your family and friends by asking them to play this game with you. So there's a cartoon called The Far Side, and okay, so some people, I get some students like, I've never heard of that. Like, what are your parents doing? What? Gilligan's Island and The Far Side, they're just must-dos. Okay, so this one was, my husband got me a calendar, and so this was the June one, and I thought it was it the June one? I thought it was funny, because it's like Vikings, but they're chasing, and they got cats, and they got like a little rubber duck on their prow, because I think they're gonna lose. I feel like the Vikings with the cats and the rubber duck are gonna lose. They're a little odd, and sometimes a little sick, but very funny. Anyway, I thought it would be fun. I think it's hilarious with their little rubber ducky face on the prow of their Viking ship. What?
It's not a show, it's a bunch of...
Oh, it's a comic strip. It's a comic strip. The Far Side. Okay, enough of that. So, the first question I asked you, let me find my questions. For what profession, and I put profession in quotes because it's not really a profession. Bailey, what's the profession? Well, that's why I put it in quotes.
Any other jobs with like farmers and
Yes, that's exactly, and that's the second part. What?
seen any jobs?
Okay, but what? In other words, when we say Vikings, what do we think of? Yeah, what do they do? Vandalize and pillage, loot and pillage, and they're. You know what? This shows you've had a good history upbringing if you don't instantly think of looting and pillaging. Vikings are notorious for looting and pillaging. And they're tall. Yes, which makes them seem nicer. But yeah, that's the difference. That's why all my students are like, no, we love the Vikings. They don't say, yeah, they kill everybody and they steal the church stuff and they burn the buildings to the ground. And the guys are like, yeah, we want to do that. So Vikings have been known for destruction, going around destruction. Now, Bailey, because this was part of your answer, why is that not totally an accurate description? Oh, well, you want me to read your answer? I don't mind.
Sorry.
You're not the only one. Okay. There were many other jobs like farmers and merchants, and they were seamen, sailors, because they lived along the coast. Yes, and that's what I was fishing for. That they had a lot of other jobs. You don't. Okay, think about this. There's a group of Vikings, and they're going to go out for a year and a half and burn and pillage the countryside, sail all over, and kill a bunch of people and steal their stuff. Do you take your wives and children with you? No. You leave them at home, and much to your wife's consternation, you say, see you in a year and a half, honey. Good luck with the kids, and bringing in the harvest, and milking the goats, and making the cheese and butter. They left people at home. When do you, I don't know if this is a good way to ask this question, when does a group of people decide to take their wives and children with them? When they move. When you go to settle in a new place, you don't want to leave your family. You just move away. That's mean. Do that. You take your family with you. But if you're just going out to loot and pillage, you don't take your family. So sometimes, yes, they looted and pillaged. I'm sorry to report. Apparently they did not wear helmets with the horns. That is a myth. I know, it makes me sad too, Rhett. I was thinking, I want the helmets. Does everybody know what I mean when I'm doing this? Okay. That's not really a thing. That was just an embellishment later. But they did loot and pillage, but they did farm. And they did take their families to go settle in new places. It wasn't just looting and pillaging. Yes, Bailey. What? Possibly. I don't know why not. I don't know. Or maybe they just, instead of having the horns on their heads, they could use those horns.
Yeah, they just like use it and
So look at the map. Hey guys, look at the map I just gave you. So I know mine isn't big enough to show you, but you've got your own and you can kind of follow where I'm pointing to. So I'm not worried about the Magyars and the Muslims. Look at the key in the upper right-hand corner. Does everyone see that? Where it tells you what the lines mean? Don't worry about those lines. We're only looking at the solid lines, Vikings. And look at all the places where those solid lines went. Oh my goodness. Do you want a map? I think I make one for Julia, and then I forget that Julia, first of all, they went to Iceland. You see up to the upper left-hand corner? And they went on from Iceland. We'll talk about that in a minute. They settled Iceland. Has anyone in this room ever, when you were younger, read the story of Rolf and the Viking Bow? I would make you read it, except it's more appropriate. It's a good read aloud for younger kids. Sometimes it's written in this very elegant, like Alan French, who wrote The Red Keep, the story of Rolf and the Viking Bow. It's about Vikings in Ireland, and it's all about forgiveness and Christianity versus, it's a really good, I love it. So if you're ever looking for a good book, it's like, I'm just in the mood for a good book about Vikings. Story of Ralph and the Viking book. Okay. So Iceland is one place. Look at this line. Look up here and follow my finger. Where is this line going? Where is Kiev? Well, yeah. What country is Russia? The Vikings went to Russia. Now, have you ever noticed that Russian people don't look Asian? Picture a Russian person and picture a Chinese or a Japanese or a Southeast Asian person. They look different, don't they? What? Yeah. Yeah, it was. Because the settlers of Russia are European. They don't look Asian. So in your book, I'm skipping around. We'll go through the questions. I know I'm kind of all over the place. In your book, she says that the people who already lived there called these new people Rus. And she says because it was a word that meant rower, because they came in their ships down the river. But most of the time when I've heard this, they say they called them Rus because Rus meant red. And they had ruddy cheeks and sometimes red hair, but that complexion and that makeup, and that they called them, apparently no one knows why they called them that, in other words. And people are making guesses. But as you can see, this is why we call that place Russia. Yeah, Maya. I don't know, but what, like Russian? I don't know. I don't know anything about Russian. Please ask. I would be interested in knowing because you know how people who study languages put them in groups? I don't know what group Russian falls into. That's interesting. Please, well, fill us in when you find out. They even, if you look on your maps, follow that Russian line. They went all the way down to Constantinople. Are we following on the maps, gentlemen? The numbers are years. That's not one number. That's a series of 3 years. They came to Constantinople, and because, hey guys, we need to, next step is somebody's going to move, okay? See, that's why I lost my train of thought. Oh, because they were tough, right? You don't make a living looting and pillaging and not be pretty tough. And so the emperor saw these newcomers and said, "You guys are awesome. Would you like to be my personal bodyguard?" And Vikings became the personal bodyguard of the emperor, the Varangian Guard. Which is kind of cool. I just don't think of Vikings in Russia. I don't think of Vikings in Constantinople, but they were all over the place. Yes, Bailey. I'm sorry? Say again. Yes, Istanbul, it's now called Istanbul. Mm-hmm. And it was called Byzantium before that. Yes, Maya. You know what? I do not know. It was over a period of time. Ella was looking. Do you see the numbers under there, under Constantinople? It's 3 years. So there were years that waves of newcomers came in, but it was over a period of time, more than one emperor. But I don't know the names. Oh yeah, the Roman emperor, the Eastern Roman emperor. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry. I misunderstood your question. Another place they went that's important is, so look at my, okay, slow down. I've been drinking matcha in the morning. We can't tell, you're just being normal. Look up at the key, and do you see how the stripes mean Viking settlements? And so you can see on the map, see how lots of Vikings settled in North Africa. Lots of Vikings settled in Spain, where there were already Muslims living. Lots of Vikings settled in England. Look at England. We're going to read about those guys separately. Did you notice how I didn't ask you to read section 4 in the Dorothy Mills book? We are going to read it, but it's all about these guys, and we're going to read it when we talk about England. But there's one other important place. Just a second, Ella. Look just south of England. If you're not sure where I am, look at the map, and then go down to Europe, down to France, and do you see a little place on the north coast of France? Does everyone, I want you to find it, because this is an important spot. Does everyone know? This is called Normandy. And Vikings, actually, I think I'm answering all your questions for you. I'm sorry, but we're flowing. One group of Vikings was invading the land of the Franks. This was in your reading. His name was Rollo. And Rollo was pain, because, you know, the pillage thing. And so the leader of the Franks said, Rollo, if you will just stop it, we will give you a piece of land and you can just settle down and live there. And Rollo's, you got it. So a group of Vikings came and settled in northern France, and we call that Normandy, and he became the Duke of Normandy. Now, this was in, I don't know what year it was, but I can't, 70, that's a right year. There's a family tree in the Dorothy Mills book. His great-grandson, great-great-grandson, some descendant, is a man named William. And William is going to go back across the English Channel, and he's going to take over England in the year 1066, and we call him William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror was a Viking. He was a descendant of Rollo, a Viking guy that was offered a place to settle. So, did they pillage and loot? Yes. Did they sometimes settle and farm? Yes. This is the next question I asked you. What kind of gods did these people worship? Oh, everybody wants to answer this one. Rhett. Yes. All the people from the Marvel movies. So, Odin and Thor. Sometimes Odin is called Woden, same guy. Thor, sometimes she's called Freya, and sometimes she's called Freya. There's a Frigga, and there's a Balder, and there's a Loki, and Heli, or Hela, which probably is why we call the place hell. Because early Christians referred to it as Hades, because that's what the ancient world referred to the place where the dead go, Hades. It became hell. This is my guessing. I'm guessing it's because of the Vikings. Yes. We are actually, so I had so many books I wanted you to read all at once. Because I thought, oh, this is when we should read this book, but this is also when we should read that book, and this is also, so unfortunately we're spreading them out a little bit. We are going to be reading later this semester a book called The Children of Odin, and it is a retelling of Norse mythology. So we're going to read all those stories about Loki and Balder and Thor and Odin and Ragnarok and all the cool stuff, all right? But you're going to have to wait a few weeks, but it's coming. Simeon, did you have a question? Okay. This is your next, oh, yes, Bailey. Oh, you want to answer the question? Okay, you got it. Who discovered America 500 years before Columbus? Yeah. No, that's fine. Yes. They were attacked. One of them was killed. Yes.
So they're not Columbus, when he came,
Yes.
totally made a miscalculation. And so Columbus thought he was in India.
Yes.
And calling the natives.
However, Yeah, but I say Indian. I'm sorry, Ella. You can, tomato, tomato. It bothers me when people say Native Americans because it's like it's been 500 years, we all know who we mean.
True.
You know?
What, like, you say it. What do you
I know. I usually say Indians from India, but I don't talk about Indians from India very much. Not to be mean. I just don't know any. And I don't teach Asian history. I teach Western history. I don't mean to imply I don't care about Indians from India. I knew some people who were missionaries in India for a long time. So, but I do because it's how I grew up. That's what the whole Native American thing is pretty new, and in my growing up, they're Indians, and so. But I don't get angry when people say Native Americans. Like, I totally understand things, so it's not ambiguous. But forgive me, I will be calling them Indians, and that's why I put discovered. There were people here already, but Eric the Red traveled out. So this is my bad geography. You guys will do much better because you're forced to draw maps. I was not. I had no geography in school whatsoever. I know. I graduated from college, Phi Beta Kappa, with honors. I had no geography. I had to learn it all with my kids. Isn't that sad? Go home and thank your parents. Okay, so this is Iceland. Yay. This is Greenland. And this is Canada. And then Maine, you know. Is that pretty good? Okay. Greenland's probably up a little bit. So calm down. So Iceland, they went to Greenland partly because Iceland is not very big and tons of people can't live there. And when you have big families, eventually you need to spread out, right? But the bad thing about Greenland is it's not very green at all. Iceland is much nicer than Greenland, it is my understanding. But if you call Greenland the place that's even colder and icier than Iceland, are you going to move there? But if you call it Greenland, oh, Greenland. And then, you know, you pack up all your stuff and you sail, there's like, crud. Greenland isn't green at all. I'm sure there are parts of Greenland that are green sometimes. But it's not, the climate isn't nearly as nice. They named it something nice so people would move there. I know, which is a little mean. So you know this is Africa. That's easy to draw because it's just and apparently there are a lot of storms when you sail around the tip of Africa. And so originally they referred to it as the Cape of Storms, but who wants to sail to the Cape of Storms? Nobody volunteers for that. So what do we call it? Does anybody know? Cape of Good Hope. Maybe because you're just like, please, Lord, I hope we will make it around. But I would sign up for a voyage. We're going to the Cape of Good Hope. Sign me up. We're going to the Cape of Storms. They did the same thing down there. So they moved to Greenland, Eric the Red, and then notice he had a son. He's Eric's son. Do you see that's how he gets his last name?
Okay, so I find it really interesting in you will see that like Thor's last name is Odin's son and Loki's last name is Loki's son.
Yes.
And basically just the dad name with son after it.
Yes. Do you ever think about that? You know, when you read history books, people don't often have last names, do they? This is the problem in Europe when everybody names their son Henry or Charles. And that's why I guess they have to be the short or the bald or the do-nothing or the great or whatever. How about if we just change society, instead of last names, we just give everybody a nickname? The blonde, the tall. But then, yeah, but some people would not like their nicknames. I fear I am one of those people. But Leif or Leif? Do you guys remember Leif Garrett? Okay, was he Leif? Did we always say Leif Garrett or did we say Leif Garrett? I wasn't a big fan. Leif? Okay, we'll go with Leif. Sailed on exploratorily, and by the way, there's an island here. No, Baffin Island is big and it's up here somewhere. Newfoundland. And it's spelled New-found land. It was a newfound land that they sailed to. Mrs. Ferguson was born in Newfoundland. Fun fact. My dad was in the Coast Guard. he was stationed in the Coast Guard there. He was doing I'm sorry, this has nothing to do with Vikings, but it's interesting, and it's history. He was the iceberg watch radio controller for the North Atlantic. So they stationed Coast Guard guys there, and after the Titanic sank in 1912, they started round-the-clock, 24/7 radio service on call for all ships in the North Atlantic. My dad said that he had to do a 12-hour, you did not leave, you did not go to the bathroom, you did not leave the radio. I mean, I'm assuming that if you had an emergency, they had somebody else in the station that could come sit there for the moment that you're gone. But you didn't move. And he said mostly it was medical emergencies on board. It was not icebergs or sinking ships, but he had to do, people would radio in and say, you know, somebody's dying, what do we do? Can you have medical, you know, helicopter come out to us or something like that? But they had men stationed there, and I assume they still do, for shipping in the North Atlantic after the Titanic sank. And my dad was one of them for a while, and that's why I ended up being born there. But anyway, point being that Leif and his crew came to Newfoundland, and as far as we know, down the coast, your book says maybe as far as Maryland. Because apparently, it said in the book, they were going somewhere where grapes were growing and where they could leave their animals out at night without bringing them in. So it must have been a pretty temperate, nice place. Yeah, Rhett. Doesn't seem very south to us. Yes. Like balmy Maryland, you know. But yeah, for them it was. So we, archaeologists, have done a lot of work in Newfoundland, on the coast of Canada, and in New England, digging up Viking artifacts, Viking camps. And they've learned a lot since your book was written about, you know, they didn't settle there. They didn't bring their wives and kids. It was exploratory. So we don't see their homes and things like that, but we find a lot of tools and military type, you know, weaponry, things like that, right here in America. Next question I asked you, what was Viking life like in the settlements in Iceland, and is it how we normally picture Viking life? Oh, let's do somebody that hasn't, Jesse. What was what was it like in Iceland? Tell us what you said.
They lived independently and in small settlements. We typically picture Vikings
Yes. And not having a formal government structure and everything. Yeah, Maya, you want to add to that? Well, it depends on how you read what she said. They did have a parliament and laws, but they said that they tried to keep the number of laws to a minimum. So when they started expanding laws, they were more like actual guidelines. They weren't really laws. And they would go on a case-by-case basis. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, in this case, we don't really need to follow it. But they did have a core of lawmakers and a legal system and a court system, which we think about pillagers and looters kind of not caring about the law and the courts very much, but they did. Yeah, Ella. Yes. Yes. Right. So they developed a freedom-loving, we all going to band together and set up. The reason I wrote this on the board, I learned Rolf and the Viking Bow. I learned it from Rolf and the Viking Bow. Ting. They pronounce it ting instead of thing. I read half of Rolf and the Viking Bow saying thing. And then I looked in the glossary in the back, pronounced ting. Like, okay. And the all ting, where they would come together and give their judgments. Anyway, point being, we don't have a group of people lawless, crazy, with horns, just burning everything indiscriminately. They did burn things. I don't want to give you the impression that all of that is wrong. It was a horror to Europe. It was, you'll read this in history books, that in different time periods, mothers have frightened naughty children by saying, if you're not good so-and-so will come and get you, which is maybe not a very good parenting plan. I don't know. But it could be the boogeyman or whatever. I don't know what nice mother would say, if you're not good, the boogeyman. But they say that European parents used to scare their children, if you're not good, the Norsemen will get you. They were the boogeyman, okay, of early modern Europe, or early Europe, medieval Europe. So, what was my last question? Oh, I already answered the last question. I'm very sorry. How did the Vikings come to settle in Normandy? Would anybody like to give their version? I'm going to let Bailey do it. Yes, yes. And they were harassing the Franks, weren't they? And the king of the Franks said, you know what, how about we make a deal? You stop burning my stuff, and I will give you a place to live. Yes, and you're now the Duke of Normandy, which means we're going to talk about the feudal system later this year. You owe me. I'm the king, and you're my underling, lord, and you owe me. We're going to talk about that when the Dukes of Normandy become the kings of England. And it gets kind of weird when the king of England is a vassal of the king of France. Causes a lot of problems. Yes, Ella.
But was it part of the deal that they became Christian?
Yes.
And that they
Yes, which is what like vassalage. So they have to submit to the king. Yes. That covers all our questions. We're going to be revisiting these Northmen or Norsemen or Vikings when we read about their adventures in England. And King Alfred, who lived in England and spent much of his reign fighting off the Danes, who are also Northmen, Norsemen, Vikings, Danes. Notice on your map again where these people are coming from. Denmark, Norway, Sweden. I just thought of this. I wonder if Norway is called Norse and Norway must be related. It can't be a coincidence. Danes, Norse. And in a few weeks, let's see, probably sometime in November, we'll be reading The Children of Odin. And we'll spend several weeks with Norse mythology, which is very cool. And then, like we've been doing with Arabian Nights, like Aladdin, we can compare the Avenger Norse gods to the real Norse gods. Hopefully, a riot won't break out when people have very strong feelings. Now, I want to talk about the Arabian Nights, but I told you that I was going to give you a game. And I want to look at the game. Obviously, we're not going to play the game here because we don't have them made. Take it home. I know, I'm sorry. When the Vikings buried their dead, particularly kings, chiefs, they did, first of all, is there anyone in here who has actually read the book, The Fellowship of the Ring? Not seen the movie, but read the book. See, I wanted to read those this year for the medieval year so bad. That's a lot of pages. That would suck away like 9, 12 weeks. Next summer, read Lord of the Rings. The reason I bring it up is because something happens to Frodo and Sam as they are heading towards Bree. They get waylaid in the Barrow Downs, where there are these mounds of earth. All right, maybe like 15, 20 feet tall, not skyscraper tall, not pyramids, okay? And inside them are burials. This is a Viking method. So you would take your chief, he's dead, you gotta bury him. And you would dig, not a deep hole, not like we bury people 6 feet underground, just slightly underground, okay? And maybe you might put a whole ship, yeah. In which case it's gonna be a big mound when you mound dirt over it. Or it might not be the biggest ship they have, you know. But you might lay him in the ship. You might set up a throne and set his body on the throne, like sitting up, and just sit him there with his crown and all his jewels and everything. I like your face. Weird. And then you'd put all his stuff around him. You know, they're not the only people that bury people with stuff, right? Think of Egyptian tombs, and even we bury people with stuff sometimes. Okay, we don't put like loads of gold into a grave, but sometimes we toss in flowers. Sometimes we decide to bury people with their rings, and you know, so it's not so weird. And then they heap a big mound of dirt over it. All right. Sometimes they even, hey Roy, let's not. Sometimes they even make a structure with a tunnel, sort of like a pyramid chamber, and then heap dirt over that. So you see this mound of dirt in the distance, and it's a burial mound. So the interesting thing is we find them. Archaeologists find them, and they go inside and they can find out a lot about Viking life by the stuff they buried. One of the things they find is a game, an actual game. And you're gonna notice it's a lot like chess, and it's a little less, but somewhat like checkers. It's like if chess and checkers had a child, it would be this game. And it is called, here, I'm not gonna write it. My daughter goes to Renaissance fairs and medieval fairs. She got me a game board. It's called Nevatafel. This is my Nevatafel board. It's got another game on the back that I don't know how to play. And what? Yes, so these are runes. These are Norse runes, which if you've seen the Lord of the Rings movies, you will notice Tolkien based like dwarvish runes on Viking, because you know he was a medieval lit professor. That was his day job, and he knew all of these. Gandalf, so you probably either read The Hobbit or seen The Hobbit. Gandalf makes a mark on Bilbo's door so that the dwarves, the band of thieving, you know, because they want to hire a thief, the band of dwarves comes, he marks a rune on Bilbo's door. Anyway, Nevatafel. I am going to give you materials to make a Nevatafel game at home, and we're going to go over the rules, and it's really not very difficult, but, so it's easy enough you could play it with younger siblings, but it's difficult enough that there's lots of strategies you can employ. So if you play, like 2 adults can play, and it's a real game. It's tough, but it's easy rules. So really young people could do it. So when my kids were growing up, we played Nevatafel whenever we studied the Vikings. And so what I'm going to give you, I'm going to show you before I hand this out, because I know what happens when I hand things out. You just suddenly start reading it and you ignore me. Would you, Alice, do me a favor? Would you just, this are your questions for next week. While I get my stuff out, she's going to pass these around. We are reading chapter 7, part 1, but everybody look at me. Part 1 has an A and a B and a C, I think. You're familiar, you know, we've had chapter 6, part 1, 2, 3, and 4. This one has a part 1A, part 1B, and it says A, it says B. We're only reading part 1A. So, parents are taking notes. So, it is only, okay, we're past that. It is only the part that is called Anglo-Saxon England. Anglo-Saxon England. All right, so Alice, if you would make sure everybody gets one of those, and I think you're going to end up with an extra, which you can bring back to me. I need to start letting people do my errands for me around here so I don't trip over my stuff. So as she passes out, everybody can just kind of look at me. I'm going to give you 3 pages. The first page is the rules. We are going to go over the rules. We're going to read them all together because I know you're going to have questions. The next page is a game board, and the next page is the game pieces. All right? Yes. Yes, you may, because it's going to take a while to pass all these out. So, you've got an extra? Here, you can just give it to me. Thank you, Roy. Oh, by the way, ignore the back. Mrs. Ferguson accidentally printed out last week's questions again. Ditzy. So, actually, Ella, why don't you take some? And Isabella, do you mind? Go ahead and you just distribute. And I'm going to show you what my family did, and then we're going to look at the rules. And then we'll talk about the Arabian Nights, and I'll tell you what you're going to read next. And if there ends up being an extra one, you can just leave it on the table. I'll collect it after the end. So the game, just ignore the rules for now. We're going to read the rules together, so I know you want to read the rules, but just ignore the rules. Would you please give that back to Simeon? My family took, is there an extra somewhere? Okay. My family took the game board and we copied it twice as big at 200%. You don't have to. It just makes it easier to work with, okay? And we glued it to a piece of cardboard so that it doesn't, because if it's paper, it's going to get crumbly and be hard to use. Then, that next page, we took the game pieces and I just glued that whole thing to poster board and cut them up. You see, this is one of the game pieces and I just glued it to red poster board. And then we cut them all out. We have a little bag of pieces. Notice, everybody turn to the last page that has pieces. I'm going to peek over Alice's shoulder so that okay. So, in the upper left-hand corner, the one piece that's by itself, do you see how it's different than all the rest? The picture is different. That's the king. Do you see how there's a row under the king that have a white background? They're the defenders of the king. The other 2 rows are the attackers of the king. Now, my family decided those were kind of hard to tell apart. So, we colored the attackers. Do you see how it's kind of orange? I took a colored pencil and I colored it one color. And are these all attackers? Yes. And I left the defenders white. And then the king, we colored him yellow. We just colored him a different color just so you could see it better. None of that is mandatory. It just made it easier to see. Okay? So, you print out your board and you glue it to paper. You print out your pieces and then you're ready to play. Here's how you play. I'm going to hold the board up. The king goes in the middle. The defenders of the king go in all those spaces with the Celtic knotting looking that are around the king. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Is that right? 4, 8, 12, yes. The attackers go on these spaces on the outside. Everybody with me so far? All right? So you've got a king, and you've got all his defenders, and then you've got the attackers on the outside. The goal of the game is for the king to get to one of the corners. If the king gets to a corner, this side wins. The king and the defenders win. If the attackers make it so that the king can't possibly get to a corner, that would be like checkmate if you play chess. Jesse, it seems easy, but by golly, it's not. It's just crazy once you start. And after you play a few times, you're like, oh, I need to do this first. And it's just like playing chess. You realize the things you need to do. Yes, Roy? Yes, so one strategy is to enclose them. One strategy is to close off the corners. Now, here's how the pieces move. Pieces can only move in a straight line. No diagonal. Only straight lines. You can't jump over another piece. You can't jump over your own piece or someone else's. Okay, good so far? You can move one space, or you can move the whole length of the board if you want. Doesn't matter how many spaces you move on your turn. But it has to be in one straight line. No turning, in one turn. Okay? Here's how you capture someone else. So, I'm going to make these are my spaces on my board, okay? In case you didn't figure that out. Okay. So, this is going to be an attacker and this is going to be a defender. Attacker, defender. That's my code. Okay, everybody, can you see this? All right, I'm going to put it down. So, oh my. If I'm here and I've got the attacker has a piece here and a piece here, okay? In one turn, I could move my piece up here and move here, right? And the next turn, I could move my piece here. If I surround this piece on both sides, I take them off the board. I've captured. All right? Now, you can't, if I have a piece here and a piece here, that's not surrounding. They've got to be on opposite sides. And as soon as I do that, I've captured that piece. Yes? Yes. Yes, you could also do this. All right, just for my illustration. So I've captured. Now, what if my guy is here, okay? And these two guys are just sitting here. They're just minding their own business, they're just sitting there. And I move here. I am not automatically captured. I can move in between two enemy pieces and be safe. I can move through them. But if I want to capture somebody, I have to be the one that makes the move to capture. They can't just wander in. I could do this. I could take this guy and move him here, and if I'm too stupid to move, then in the next turn I can move back here, and now I've made the move and I can capture. See, I can boom, boom. But as long as I made the move, I can capture. That's basically all the rules. Let's look at the rule. I don't have one. I'm going to look over Amherst's shoulder. Say again, Simeon.
Since there's like two pieces to capture someone, I feel like it would be easy to not be captured.
Go play it and then report. I'm just looking to see if, do you mind if I just, I'm sorry, I don't have a copy. Okay, so I think, look at the rules. Okay, the attackers always move first. Yes, the king and the defenders versus the attackers. Yes, the attackers always get to move first. It says have to move in a straight line. Oh, the corner squares. Only the king can end on one of the corner squares. In other words, other pieces cannot sit here. These are like king's thrones in the corners. It's banned for the commoners. Yes, Simeon. Yes, and if the king gets captured, the game is over, right? Just like in chess. The king gets captured, the king actually gets captured, you know, that's not in the rules, but when we played it, we did a different thing. Okay. One last thing. Either side may capture an enemy by trapping an enemy between one of its own pieces and the corner. So, in other words, I'm sitting on this corner, right next to this corner, on the square. And some other guy comes in and he moves right next to me, I'm captured. This is a problem for people who like to put their pieces. You see, this keeps you from being able to, well, I'm just going to move pieces around the corner so that the king can't get there. Well, boom, I move here and I've captured you. I move here and I've captured you, and you've just lost two guys. Yes, Roy. No, you can go on any squares except the corners. Yes. Yes. Although other pieces also can't stop on his throne. It's like the king has 5 thrones, and other pieces can't sit on them. Yes, that is what I'm saying. Now, I did this yesterday, and I forgot about this. I haven't played this with my kids in a long time. I feel like our rules, so you can, this is optional if you want to like up the level of difficulty. When we played it, the only way to capture a king was to get on all 4 sides of him. So if this is the king, you'd have to have a piece everywhere, which would be an increased difficulty, okay? By the way, why are there differences in rules and how people play this game? That's because the Vikings didn't bury a rule book with the game. So if you tweak the rules a little bit, I don't think Vikings will come pillage you and punish you, pretty sure. And also, if you Google Nevatafel, there are various versions of the, I mean, that rule thing, I just printed online, okay? So you could look at variations if the way I've said it is just too easy. Now, it tends to be, and I can't for the life of me remember, but I think it's harder for the attackers to win. And so a lot of people, when they play, they do 2 rounds. You take sides, and then you play 1 game, and then you switch sides, and let each person take a turn being each side, and it's more fair and less frustrating that way. So I hope you will try it. My family played this a lot, even when we weren't studying the Vikings, and had a good time. Yes? I don't know. Here we go. HNEFATFAL. HNEFATFAL. All right, have fun with that. So we had 10 minutes. We're good. We finished. Does anybody have, before we leave the Vikings, before we move on, are we all good? Does anybody have a comment or a question? Okay, yeah, well, you know what? You might, I don't know, maybe, I think our dad, my husband did it at work. Like sometimes people have access, or you could go to like printer places. If you really were into it, and you could get one 300%, you know, you get an enormous one. You get one like my big board. And I'm sure they will probably do it pretty cheap. Oh, so you could make your own board. Exactly. You could buy a poster board and just draw your own little symbols on there with the same design. You could get creative. You could make these as Christmas gifts and make copies of the rules and give them to friends, and maybe not. So we finished the Arabian Nights. I found it interesting again. We have this crazy enchanted horse. And that story, did that story not go on and on? Yeah, and he's there, and then the woman, and then they're trying to get home, and she's kidnapped, and is the story ever going to end? But somebody yesterday, one of my students said, but remember what's going on. Scheherazade is telling stories to the king of Persia, to the Caliph of Baghdad, so she won't get murdered the next morning. So it's to her advantage to make the stories go on and on and on. Yeah, you forget the beginning of the story by the time you get to the end. Yeah, you do. Oh, yes. So to let you know, obviously we did not read 1001 Stories. This is a collection. A famous one is Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Is not in here. Does Open Sesame mean anything to any of you? Open Sesame? Okay, that story is one of the Arabian Nights stories. They chose these. You can get complete the 1001 Arabian Nights. Sometimes they're in multi-volume sets. Sometimes they're huge, those big, thick books with lots of pages. And they do finish the story. She does not get executed ever. 1001 Nights. How long does this go on? Over 3 years. And by the end of 3 years, he says, oh, I've come to love her. I'm not going to execute her. She's great. And it has a happy ending. Yes. Oh, uh-huh. So it has a happy ending, and apparently it was a good strategy. But we have the story with the crazy horse, and we have the story with, well, hold on with the olives and the gold, because that's the one I wanted to highlight. But the one where okay, I'm sorry, but the lady ate corpses, and she got turned into a horse. And someone, yes, we were talking about this yesterday, and like, they never told us. Is she some kind of ghoul? Why does she do this? No explanation. And she's just turned into a horse. And this guy's turned into a dog. And this guy's blinded. And then we have this olives and gold story. It's not supernatural. It's just sort of like, do you guys know Encyclopedia Brown? Okay, so I used to love that's back from my day, Encyclopedia Brown. And it's just one of these little mysteries, like, oh, maybe we should see if the olives are fresh. Let's test that out. No supernatural at all. It's something that could happen, right? It wasn't like the rest. Bailey, did you have your hand up, or Bailey or Maya? Okay, Ella.
The story back to the story where the dog ate corpses.
I don't know why we're laughing, because it's just so bizarre.
I was just like, where did you come up with that, too? That when he got turned into a dog, and he, after she shut his tail in the door, is crying in the street as a dog, and the other dogs came and attacked him. That goes along with, like, in real life, that's how dogs.
Yes, it is.
They attack you.
Yes.
And I'm like, at least you had the decency to be right about that.
Yeah. And if you had just gotten turned into a dog, you would feel very weak at that moment. I would feel very confused and weak.
Like, it's so cool to be a dog for like a week.
I wonder if people all through history have fantasized what it would be like to get turned into a certain animal. And maybe that's why we have stories where werewolves and things like that. But it's not always bad stories, shapeshifters, that sort of thing. If we've always wondered, I wonder what it would be like to fly like a bird. I wonder what it would be like to run like a wolf. And maybe that's just common to mankind, that we wish we had those things. Yeah, Jesse. He dealt with it very well.
He's like, hey, I got that.
Why don't we talk about the whole nighttime corpse feast?
I may have
we-
seen you go to the cemetery.
I've seen that.
The bodies. Ask her about that. She's like,
Yes, yes. They're very odd. I'm glad that, I know some of you had some trouble getting your books, but at least all of us got to experience some of them, and some of you got to experience stories that others of us didn't because your version had different stories. Sample other versions. Maybe some, if you liked these, go to the library and get different collections. But it's just interesting to me that people all over the world imagine similar things and tell similar stories. And it's funny. It's very, yeah.
when the olive story, was he like in the court?
No, I don't think so. He was just a boy in the street, and the caliph had done his whole, I go out in disguise, and he overheard the boys playing.
Yeah, but like, how would the boys know?
Well, apparently it was big news in the capital. Apparently it was in the newspapers, except they probably didn't have newspapers. Well, apparently it was in the newspapers, like there must have been, well, that's what somebody said yesterday. How are the adults all too stupid to figure out that the olives aren't old?
How old is this?
I don't know, but it makes it fun isn't it fun to read that being a young person? It's like, yeah, it's the kid that saves the day. Just a second, Jesse, you had your hand up a minute ago. Jesse, did you have a comment? Okay, yes, Matthias, right? Of the Arabian Nights? Oh, no, not unless, no, only if you want to. We're done with the Arabian Nights. Well, you read whenever you want. Go for it. For next week, we're going to read something in 1 week. But do not worry, because it has pictures in it, and you could probably sit down and read it in a couple of hours, honestly. And I'm giving you the whole week, so it's kind of an easy week. We are, next week, I know we're excited and we want to get moving on, but you only got a few minutes, so stick with me and then I will free you from your bonds. Next week in the Dorothy Mills book, we're going to read about England. Specifically England after the Angles and the Saxons took over. So do you remember, I think this was in the reading you did before class, Pope Gregory, and how he was in the slave market in Rome, and he saw those really nice looking guys, and he said, were they Angles? He was told they were Angles, and he said, well, they ought to be angels. I'm going to send missionaries there. Okay, this is that group of people. They're from Scandinavia, northern Germany, and they moved various places, but one place they moved was England, and they took over. Basically, they took over England. The Celtic people that lived there before fled to Wales and Ireland, and the Angles and the Saxons took over. So from their language, the language of the Angles, we might call it Anglish. That's why we speak English, because we are descendants of the Angles. So I don't remember which year, but sometime in the 1800s. Hey guys, stick with me. This is the coolest part. Don't miss this. Sometime in the 1800s, somebody was looking through an old library, I don't know how this happens, and they found a manuscript of an epic poem in Old English, in Anglo-Saxon. I'm going to bring you a sample. Anglo-Saxon is not intelligible to us unless you're trained in reading Anglo-Saxon. It's not like Chaucer. I mean, yeah, and Shakespeare is not Old English. Shakespeare is modern English. You just have to get used to the vocabulary. But this is like a foreign language almost, but it's English. They found this poem that everyone forgot had existed. And it is about a hero named Beowulf. Beowulf. And it takes place because it mentions things that we know are real history. It mentions battles and things that must have been, as far as we know, like in the 500s to 600s, somewhere in there, okay? But as far as we know, the poem dates back to about the year 1000. Okay, so again, it's like I was writing an epic poem about the landing of the Pilgrims 400 years ago. That's what Beowulf is like. And it's kind of weird. We'll talk about this after you read it, but sometimes the people seem to be Christian, and sometimes the people don't seem to be Christian, and it's sort of on the edge of a world that's learning Christianity. The poem takes place in like Denmark and Sweden, but the poem was written in England. Why? Because people came from those places and settled in England, okay? So I'm going to have you read. It is a retelling of the poem. It is called Beowulf the Warrior. It is written, do you see like a poem? Do you look at the page? Do you see how it's not got just regular paragraphs, like there's indentings, but it doesn't rhyme, it doesn't have meter or anything. It's not hard to understand at all. And it does have pictures, and the print's pretty big, and some of the pages are blank, so it's just not going to be difficult. It has because there's the end, it has 3 parts. And so at the end of a part, then it introduces the next part. Beowulf is going to fight 3 monsters. The first one is named Grendel, and I'm not going to tell you who the other 2 are if you don't know, because I'm going to ruin the story for you. So this week, I want you to write Charlemagne and the Robbers, and you're going to have 2 kinds of parallelism in it. I want you to read the Dorothy Mills book and answer the questions. It's not a very long section, and we're going to read Beowulf the Warrior. All of it. Like I said, couple of hours. It's really, and I dare you to start one of the parts and then quit. I mean, you're going to want to find out what happens to get to this. There's 3 parts. So you could do it, like if you read 3 days. That would be easy this week. And we will talk about it next week. All right, any questions? All right, you are free to go. Have a good week.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.